welcome everybody. This is the first of Crimson's new fireside chats that we're having, and I'm delighted to introduce Ollie Sinclair. Ollie, I know you're really busy at the moment with lots of clients, but I really appreciate your time this afternoon to talk about the Power Platform. And I know that there's some really exciting updates coming down the line. I'll put a link on the screen now to our blog that shares what we understand at the moment that's coming from Microsoft. As most of us are aware now, there are 2 waves a year in updates to Microsoft's business platforms. So I think, Ollie, it's fair to say that the wave 2 arrives, is it the start of October for general availability? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we've got some sort of early access features that have happened, sort of dropped last week, but the GA rollouts, usually start sort of from October onwards.
Yes. So as a Microsoft partner, we get early availability to assess this software, and we get documentation. I think it's fair to say it's quite fast moving, and there's a lot to take on board. So we're having to do a lot of, I say the royal we there, but some of us are having to take on a lot of information very quickly to be able to share with clients. So that's a fair comment, would it be?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So just this wave release alone, you've got probably throughout from now until sort of March 2022, just for the Power Platform, you've got more than 50 odd features and sort of enhancements or feature releases for the Power Platform, and that's not to take into consideration all of the modules of Dynamics 365. So it's a lot to get through, and it's a lot to talk about and learn.
Yeah, so we're not going to be able to cover all of that today. We want to try and keep this pithy, but there are a few features that I think we wanted to focus on that are probably most important to draw people's attention to. So I think let's get started with that. I know, I think all up, it sounds like there are a number of features with this one that are going to have some really big business benefits, and the first one that we wanted to talk a little bit about was custom pages. So, Ollie, do you want to explain a little bit more about what you're seeing there?
Yeah, absolutely. Funnily enough, it's just a coincidence that this got announced by the Power Platform team at the same time as Wave Release 2. So the custom pages side of things isn't actually a part of Wave Release 2. It just seems to have dropped at the same time. So it's definitely useful to talk about. So to set the scene, when we look at the Power Platform, we look at creating applications, and usually in 3 different ways. You either have Power Platform, sort of Power Portal platform, which is sort of your Power Portals, your websites, and the way to engage with your customers. Then you have 2 sets of apps, really. You've got Canvas apps and model-driven apps. Now, the Canvas apps are the ones where you're really in control of the UI, the look and feel, and also features like connecting to additional data. So you've got 500 plus custom connectors that allow you to connect to data sources within your environment or externally. And with model-driven apps are usually on the Dataverse, which is sort of the behind-the-scenes database for Power Platform. Now, traditionally, you'd sit there and you would make your choice, right? You would make your choice around Canvas apps or model-driven apps, and those choices would be, based on what you wanted to be able to do. The problem is, sometimes you want to create a model-driven app, but you want a bit of Canvas in there, and you want a bit of functionality, you want a bit of UI, you want a bit of connectivity to some additional data sources. Now, before this way of custom pages, you kind of had to embed a completely fresh Canvas app, and it was a little bit harder to do, and for citizen developers it probably wasn't too much of an option. Now with this announcement, you are able to create custom pages within model-driven apps. So it's basically like giving you a little bit of that functionality of Canvas app, within the model-driven app, and therefore we're getting closer to what Microsoft are sort of calling the convergence of apps. So hopefully, it won't be too long before this will be, towards the end of probably next year, we will just be talking about apps. It won't be model driven. It won't be Canvas. It will just be Power Apps, which would be fantastic. But for now, this is a step in the right direction. It's combining those two really feature-rich types of applications together for customers to use. So it's brilliant news.
So in terms of business benefit there, then it's about an easier way to produce your apps without perhaps going down the cul-de-sac of taking one route and then maybe getting stuck maybe at a later stage if it needs to be more scalable. Is that right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where at the point in which you're trying to do a bit of a solution design, you think, okay, yeah, no, most of our requirements are going to be fit within a model-driven app. Let's go to a model-driven app. Then down the line on implementation, the second version of it, or new requirements come in, and it's like, actually, there is a bit of extension we need to do. So instead of having to ring up the developers and get coding, you can actually now do some of those features and functionalities through configuration, which is absolutely where we all want to be. So yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of ties in with the low code, no code narrative that Microsoft talk about across their platform. So good news for clients and citizen developers if it makes it slightly easier to configure, and of course for us if we're supporting clients, hopefully it's a quicker turnaround to be able to provide those solutions then. Okay, so that's custom pages then. So I know that Unified Power App Designer was something you wanted to talk about as well, Ollie. What's happening there?
Yeah, that's a good one. So the unified modern Power Apps Designer is something that it's a new way of actually designing your model-driven apps. It probably coincides with this release because you can only get custom pages with this new designer, but it's a much more user-friendly, quick to access drag and drop functionality around creating model-driven apps. So again, it's just it's sort of the evolution of how we're creating and designing apps. The designer is just going to help us out with that. So a really, really good one, and I'm quite looking forward to sort of playing around with being able to do that.
And so a more visual environment then.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Okay. So I think also there was some good news for configurators in terms of classic mode going away then.
Yeah, absolutely. So because we've got this new designer and because it should give us all of the configuration elements that we're used to in terms of the old ways of designing model-driven apps. The old classic editor. So if for the configurators out there, they'd understand what we're saying. When you go into a model-driven app and you try and edit that and add components to that, generally speaking, the old designer, you would be able to do things like drag fields into a specific page and create subgrids and things like that, and that was really, really good. But there are a few features like field mappings. There was some custom control elements that weren't quite there with the designer within the sort of the unified interface, and we had to go back to what's known as the classic. Go back to classic, where we were designing model-driven apps back in the Microsoft Dynamics CRM days, and unfortunately it was a bit frustrating because you just had to and fro between those two different designers. So with this wave release, and it's yet to be signed off in terms of whether this is true or not, but the message we're getting from Microsoft is that they're going to switch off the classic editor because all of the features and functionalities that you were able to do in terms of configuration will now be available in this new app designer. So no need to go back to legacy anymore. You are now, fully into the real world of the new designer. So rather than flip-flopping between the two designers, we're definitely going to stick on the one designer now, which is going to make it a lot easier for people that have been using it, but also for a lower level of sort of engagement for people that aren't used to configuration and being able to do that citizen developer thing. They will just go and be able to do everything they need to do on the one designer, which is really, really good.
Brilliant. So that's good news, but a caveat there that, and this is quite interesting, isn't it? Because we're there's still a little bit of ambiguity as to what will appear in this release, but that's as we understand it today. But we can see the direction of travel anyway.
Yeah, definitely the direction's there, and again, you know, with the Waves release, they are release notes, so they don't detail out absolutely every sort of avenue of configuration. So it's going to be on, you know, partners like Crimson being able to lead the front and make sure that those features and configuration elements are actually in the new designer. And if they're not, you know, alert our customers and our community that you know there are things that we need to go back to Microsoft on. So yeah.
Okay, great. And then I've got here in my notes that the custom app is going. What's the news there then, Ollie?
Yeah, so this is a long time coming, to be honest. The switch to the switch to unified interface is what we classify as the new world of model-driven apps and how we sort of navigate and have UI on the Power Platform. It's been there for a while, I think, you know, even a couple of years, I believe. But the legacy side in terms of the custom app is actually now sort of going to disappear from your screens. So the custom app used to be when that initial transition from dynamic CRM to the real Power Platform and the ability to create your own apps was around. The way to navigate just traditionally to the dynamic CRM side would be through this custom app. So it was just a web client, and we're basically you know, they're taking the decision to decommission that completely, and I think that's great. I mean, the chances of people using that custom app shouldn't be massive. We should all have been on the unified interface for a number of years, let alone months. So it's again just tidying up that area and just making sure that these elements are off the screen. So it's good from Microsoft to get rid of that.
Brilliant. Okay, that's fabulous. So lots of new features appearing then within Power Apps. But let's talk about a little bit more around some of the other elements of the Power Platform. I know that there's some news with Power Automate, particularly if administrators are handling failed runs. What's the news there then, Ollie?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a really good step forward for Power Automate, being in terms of maintenance of these sort of flows, as we call them, or runs as we call them. So Power Automate, traditionally you would build up a Power Automate, which allows you to connect to data sources, run some actions, update some fields, do some calculations, modify some data, and push it to other areas. And Power Automate, massively powerful tool. The downside is some of the administration and maintenance of that tool is less than desired, to be honest. One of these features is the ability to actually resubmit failed runs in bulk. Now, if you're an administrator of a Power Platform and say this was, you know, you're just doing your own flows, or it's a part of productivity, these flows, if they were to fail for whatever reason, if it was an external factor and these flows failed because the flow was fine, but what was triggering it was failing, and that gets fixed up and that issue is resolved. You then have to manually rerun all of those flows again to get your data up to date, which is a bit of a pain, a bit time consuming. So what Microsoft done is they've listened to that, the partner channel making noise around that, and decided, okay, that's sensible to actually be able to bulk run all failed runs and re-trigger them to go again in the one click. So again, from a maintenance perspective, far easier to start rerunning your flows when something has failed, and to keep that up to date. So really good bit of functionality is quite needed on that one.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I could imagine that could save quite a lot of time in some circumstances. Have you come across that in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many different times when, for example, if you are using Power Automate and you're using custom connectors. So custom connectors is a way to, again, slightly low code, a little bit of code in there because there's a little bit. But if you're creating a custom connector to an API that's an external, so say for example it was a service that you're creating what we call like a webhook, which you're allowed to consume data. If they change their APIs for whatever reason, and the formatting of that API request is not the same, then obviously all of your flows are going to fail. So we've seen that before where unfortunately we're just subservient to API logics from external factors, and they can change without your knowledge, and then all of a sudden you see a number of flows start to fail, and then the number grows. You can go and investigate that and understand that, okay, we need to quickly update the custom connector for that new field that's been added to the response or whatever it may be, and then cater for that. And then you can actually start and rerun your flows, and everything's really good. So there are a lot of examples of that where, again, being able to bulk run your flows again is really, really useful.
Great. Okay, so that's talking about failed runs, but also some good news around version control as well. Can you explain a bit about what's happening there, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So version control was always a bit of an issue with Power Automate and Flow. We had previously issues with being able to connect to the right environments when we're in solution deployments. That got resolved, earlier on in previous waves, but we really still had an issue with version control. A lot of the Power Automate elements, especially if you are a part of a system development team, you do have the ability to go ahead and sort of change your flows, and if you wanted to update your flows to add some new actions, that was absolutely fantastic. The only problem is that there wasn't any way of actually making sure that there were certain version histories of that flow, and if there was something wrong with the new way or the new design or the new actions you've added to your flow, you could roll back to a previous version. So again, adding in that that level of maintenance and that level of sort of ALM, application lifecycle management within flows within Power Automate, it's been needed, but they've really nailed it this time, and hopefully it's going to be a really good start to get this stuff sorted. It's version control, as well as if you wanted to go and edit that something, you could actually just completely remove all your edits and get back to a safe place. So really, really useful in terms of the flexibility we now have with Power Automate.
Brilliant. Okay, and just finally on Power Automate, some news around desktop flows and where that can be now connected.
Yeah. So desktop flows, the newest baby in Power Automate. I've had lots and lots of fun with Power Automate Desktop. I think there's lots of desktop flows that are really, really useful, specifically if you're in a larger enterprise organization, you can't get around it. There's a lot of legacy applications that potentially don't have the right API connectivity to it. So the desktop flows are a way of being able to integrate in a semi-automated way to be able to integrate to those legacy systems. The downside was that you used to have to run your Power Automate and actually trigger the desktop flow and consume that information back onto a cloud flow to then push it into something like Dynamics. So what they've done is they again, Microsoft have listened to the audience on that one, and they've made it possible that you can actually modify and consume data from Dataverse directly in your desktop flows to be able to use on somewhere else or consume it and push it back to the Dataverse. So just making that jump into the Power Platform that a little bit easier. So really good one, that one.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so a few things there for Power Automate, but an area we haven't talked about yet is Power BI. What's new there, Ollie?
Yeah, Power BI, they had a great wave release one, and this wave release, I'm just choosing one of quite a few, but one of the ones that really sort of, from a user perspective, I think they'll really, really appreciate. One of the tricky things, I guess, it's not difficult in terms of complexity, but it's difficult to get started, is being able to start running Power BI reports. And as a user, you're really, really used to jumping in and jumping onto a Power App, whether it be a modern driven app or a Canvas app. You're quite used to sort of seeing the ways in which you can navigate and do things. The problem was if you wanted anything in terms of Power BI reporting, if you weren't, say, for example, a configurator of the system, you'd have to sort of go into Power BI and start making your own connections and grabbing your information and then making the report and doing all that sort of stuff. So what they've done is, that can be actually quite a steep learning curve. So what they've done is there's a new thing where you can actually go ahead and use what's called a quick create, which is basically you can go ahead within your model driven app and on one click just go analyze in Power BI. So analyze in Power BI is basically you're quickly creating a report right from where you're editing and consuming that data. So it's again just breaking down those boundaries between these products and being able to use them synchronously and effortlessly for the user. So again, something that I think lots of people will really, really like to see and have lots and lots of uses for. So I'm quite excited once the release has happened, what people are actually going to do with it. So that's going to be really, really good. And the good news about that one is it's in public preview in October, so it's going to be early days for us to preview it. There isn't a release date yet. Obviously, it is a part of this wave release, so it won't be long. But I'm really excited to have a play with that as well.
Fantastic, and I know that we will be updating the blog page as we start to get under the hood, so to speak, with a lot of these features. So we're sort of one step ahead, and we can advise our clients around that as well. So I suppose there's some themes coming out of this: convergence, breaking down barriers, breaking down walls. That seems to be a big theme for this release.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I mean, it's really nice to sort of see these type of wave releases coming through. Ignoring the convergence, a lot of it is not massive changes to the way that we're going to work and things like that. It's things that Microsoft have sat there and gone, oh, you know what? If we just did this, or if we just managed to get that feature and functionality, it would make a huge difference to configurators, to citizen developers, or even to just end users themselves. So it's a nice release that gives some really good business benefit immediately to our clients. So yeah, really excited.
And how does it compare to the release earlier in the year?
Yeah, from a Power Platform perspective, it's probably, in terms of the features, a little bit more specific in terms of you've got this to do, you've got that to do, and this is an add-on and that's an add-on to some existing sort of direction. From the convergence perspective, it's brilliant because there was rumors in a couple of the Ignite and a couple of the conferences that we've been listening to earlier on in the year, knowing that this is coming around the corner, and they're delivering on their promise. So from wave one, they're setting the foundation. Wave two, they're delivering on some of their promises. Really exciting for the next couple of waves in a year or so.
Brilliant. Ollie, I really appreciate your time. I mean, just to wrap things up, if you're an existing client, of course, speak to your account manager, get in touch. We'd be happy to walk through this in a bit more detail, give you a bit more context as to what it means exactly to you. I know we have a number of workshops around that. If you don't currently work with us, please also get in contact. I know, Ollie, you're very busy, but we have a team behind us that can support with this technology. So we'd be very happy to talk to you and share the experiences that we have across many of our clients in this space. So, Ollie, thank you so much for the update. I'll let you get on because I know how busy you are, and hopefully we'll catch up very soon.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thanks for the chat.